We're proud of you too, because you just got third place in the Push Road Rumble online tournament, so that's pretty cool.
With Shadow Paladin, unfortunately not Gears, but I was like, I want to try like Drag Hard Reward in Premium, of course. I thought it had some really great potential because with the whole VR aesthetics of it, now that Bendy has been banned, I was like, I just want to run the V reward with the V drag driver and then just rush my opponent.
Yeah, it was a smart choice because you had a very strong grade 3 turn as well.
Yeah, many people didn't actually play around it. They were not like prepared for it because they was just thinking, oh, he will just ride or Dragfall or old Drag Hard Reward.
And that would be it.
Yeah, that will be it, like swing for 11. But I was like, okay, if you're like on 1 damage, just go force 2, then 3 damage, and then Wimble Faster 6. And they never expected my game plan. And it was every time a different adaptation. So really proud of it. And now rushing with another deck.
Yeah, so back to his favorite clan, which is Gears.
Yeah, definitely.
And today we have a very interesting deck. It has been revealed just today.
Yeah,
actually.
Today.
So
this morning.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this deck, what I find interesting about this deck, is it's going back to the basics of Gears, but not the very basics, let's say, the time leaps.
Yeah.
And it's also in the theme.
Yeah, definitely. And they really amazed me how the deck works, because I was just thinking about the deck. Like when I first saw the cards, I was like, how can I make this? Because I was like, we have quite some Steam Maidens, not that much, but we have some. And I was like, do we some play for the name, like just for the Steam Maiden name, some for the skills, or what do we play around it? And I think for how I have built it right now, for my first adaptation, that works really well. I think there are still things to make better out of it, but I think for now it's just a good skeleton to work around. Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Show us.
Yeah, okay. So for the deck profile, I am of course playing Primordial Draco Kit. I played this of course when Lost Legend came out with Mystery Flare, and I always find it the bind starter. So whenever I play a deck that with social binding, I just play this, and for the rest, it's just a V starter. Nothing really, special about it, and we don't need it for the name consistency. So just pick whatever you like. But for the main boss unit, I'm playing this grade 4, grade 3. I mean, sorry, the grade 4s. This grade 3 is really amazing because it allows you to have many multi-attacks in the deck, and allows you to counter a bit, because for her first skill what she does is bind a card from your drop zone. Doesn't matter what card you bind, it can be a trigger, can be a Steam Maiden, whatever you want, and you can call a Steam Maiden from your bind zone to your rear circle. So with this skill you allows it to just revive anything from your drop zone that is a Steam Maiden. And if you already have your Steam Maidens prepared in your bind zone, you can prepare other Steam Maidens from your drop zone into your bind for your photo plays, or maybe any other card you want, because this deck allows you to go any card from your drop zone or the bind zone essentially, because the Steam Maiden themselves require you to have a Steam Maiden Vanguard. They only have their own skill to go a card higher with a higher grade from your bind zone, but there aren't any restriction on what you want to call. So you can call out Piano Boy, which you will see later, or any other beaters in the grade 2 department to just squash your opponent. So I'm playing 4 copies of this. For her second skill, she just time leaps essentially after the battle that the Steam Maiden attacks, and you can counter charge 1. So that's really huge because the counter charge is really needed. In the beginning I thought this deck requires you to have a lot of counter blast to run through in an entire turn, but I find it after testing that it doesn't usually use all that much counter blast, because I was thinking if you go from your grade 0 to 1 to 3 to 2, from 2 to 3, you usually use 3 counter blast and then counter charge 1 with this. So you use 2 counter blasts for the multi-attack combo, and maybe on the side column you also have the same, but you start from grade 1. So you essentially use 4 counter blasts But in testing, what I've seen, it doesn't really use that much because you usually do it on one force marker and just use 2 counterblasts in turn, which is fine essentially. Because using 2 counterblasts is for many decks just okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing Spy Brothers or something like that, it's usually okay to just counterblast to you have it mostly in the early game or essentially or after that. And yeah, really wonders. And for third skill, because yes, she has 3 amazing skills that are a really lap of text. As you can see on the printing. She gains 3k for every card in your bind zone when she's on Vanguard Circle. And on Vanguard Circle she gains 1k for every card in your bind zone.
Yeah.
So even though in the late game you don't need any more cards in your bind zone, you want to have more cards in your bind zone
for
than
the
you
power.
already for the power.
Yeah.
And you may say 1k is small. And yes, it is small, but when you count it in, if your opponent is on grade 2, she only needs 2k. So 2 cards on in your bind zone, because that will make it so she hits for 25k on a force marker. Which is just perfect numbers, even against someone that used it, a heal guard of course, they still need 10k shield.
Yeah.
So just really amazing to have a sort of a powerhouse in your last attack, because you cannot like further time leap behind your grade 3 in this deck. I don't play any grade 4s. I did it on purpose because I had seen some people that play Mystery Flare, like from the first support wave of Kirsten V. But for me personally, I think it's not that useful in this deck because you usually don't have many grades in your bind zone. Like they have usually around 10 to 12, but for Mystery Flare you need 19. So that's a big jump you want to cross, and this deck doesn't really come to that much because you usually kill your opponent before that, or you will be killed before that.
Yeah.
So I play 4 copies of this. Also a fact, she just generates you a force marker riding after another is cool, is nice, but usually you don't get there, or most at 2, that you get 2 force markers, because you also want her in the bind zone itself to be called out as a beater, so you have some Vanguard potential in her, but also a Vanguard potential, and that's what...
You want at least one in the drop zone to get her to the bind zone, and with that you're set to go.
Yeah.
But if you get to the third one, then you would ride, yes.
Yeah, of course.
Because you benefit a lot from the force marker, but you also benefit more from having her in the bind zone because it makes it just easier to get that multi-attack.
But as a boss unit, she's just really amazing.
Yeah.
Sort of like what Beatrice does for Grand Blue. A sort of a like skill build with a different type of niche and different aesthetics. And of course, this is an X skill, which Beatrice is on place to revive something from the drop. And we essentially do it every single turn. So you don't really have the need to ride every single turn. You only do it for the force mark. You don't have any on play skills or anything like that. But yeah, that is just it for the boss unit. Just really amazing. I think it's wonderful, and yeah, nothing really much else. I was thinking about running anything else as your main grade 3 or some backup grade 3, because you have some beaters that can hit for 28 on their own or something like that, but they really minus you on your hand because they require like a discard or something, or a specific discard, and I was like, it's not that beneficial, because when you're on grade 3 you don't want to make too much of a numbers, because you want to rather have more multi-attacks than have bigger numbers in the deck, because the units on themselves already hit for higher numbers. Yeah. But you want to have sort of like a finisher, like the multi-attack on themselves already go for quite some numbers, but with Piano Boy, which allows you just to bind the cards from your hand and then just get a Battle Dory effect for the entire turn. And for people that don't know what a Battle Dory effect is for the entire turn your opponent needs to guard from hand with 2 or more cards at the same time. Yeah. So if they, for example, want to PG your Vanguard, and you have used this effect before, they need to commit 3 cards, which is just huge in my opinion. Yeah. It allows you to break 10 plus cards in the opponent's hands. I did it today against Flores, and he was playing Louis Flame with Prominence Core, I think, and he just had like 10, 11 cards. I opened with 4 counterblasts and I just ripped to his entire hand. It was really amazing. And what is his potential in his deck is what you can do in the later game, where you need him. With of course the boss unit, you can send him to the bind zone from your drop, because you can of course PG with him or use the grade 3 searches to instantly send him to the drop zone. You have him in the bind zone, and then with the grade 2 you call him out, because the Steam Maidens allows you to time leap into it, because they are not restricted on needing to call a Steam Maiden. So they just go into piano and he sets you up that card restrict. So even though he's early for you in the drop zone, he's actually there for late game in your bind zone.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have not access to him, you just have a later access. But sometimes it's just handy to have him in the early game, because he also fixes you to have the perfect cards in your bind zone, because he binds from hand. So if you have a unit you really want to have in your bind zone to extend the amount of attacks, you can just do that, and the card restrict is just a extra for that, but nothing really major in the early game. Then for the grade 2s, this is also a new Steam Maiden that has come out from this morning, and yeah, I just saw
that's why she's in black and white, because she's new.
Yeah. How I see it, I always print them in black and white, because yes, I do have a printer, but usually don't print in color. But I just see it as the band card from Chiara, if you know about them. Because they need to release their future potential, and that is when the cards will be released, of course. So I just find it fitting for now, and then when the cards will be released, of course we'll get this in SP probably, and these just in triple rare, because I will definitely build this deck. On the testing today I was like, holy shit, this deck is amazing.
It's also just lots of fun to play, because this playstyle we got in premium before even V existed, but now you also get it in V, and in these aesthetics, which actually make it very interesting, because from the start of V they didn't really jump into this until they released Melon.
Yeah,
but again, Melon
worked really different.
Yeah, she was kind of strange to work in some decks.
Yeah, even though she's also a Steam Maiden, she doesn't work in this deck.
No.
Which is really weird, but yeah, it is what it is. But when you look at premium, holy shit, the Melon is insane. She is the best Steam Maiden there is. But premium is a total other aesthetic aspect of this deck, because I think this deck also has some really great potential in premium. Because they're not really that much restricted. They're only restricted on having a Steam Maiden Vanguard. So if you just play this as your boss unit,
she gives a marker, you stride on top of her, and you set her up.
The only thing is you don't have access to the beautiful things that Chronojet has. Just run Chronojet as a backup, and maybe you see that.
Yeah, you could make 2 different decks, but just talking about V for now. This deck just gives you that timely feeling.
True. And for her skill, she essentially does the same as what the grade 3 does, but she uses a counterblast. So the Vanguard says when something that is a Steam Maiden attacked, you can bind it to call a grade higher from your bind zone, and she countercharges, but the rest of the Steam Maidens use a counterblast. So that's where the resource management come in, because every other attack that isn't from your Vanguard requires a counterblast. So that is where I was first thinking about this deck uses a lot of counterblast, because if you do a lot of multi-attacks, every multi-attack uses counterblast, but if you spread them across multiple turns, then this countercharge comes in huge, because then it will be countercharged in 2 or 3 turns, countercharged 2 or 3, which just helps with this deck. But for her second skill is when actually her first skill, I just explained her second skill. For her first skill, when she's being placed from the bind zone, you can just bind a card from your drop zone, and she gains 3k for every grade of that card. So she's a powerhouse on itself, because if you dumped Piano in the early game, of course, and she binds it from your drop zone, then she is just 90k on itself, which is just perfect against Exo clans. Like 9k, you hit this on the 19, even though they use the heal card, you can jump across it and just smack their ass.
They need to just put at least a card from their hand there.
And with this card you usually don't need to prepare a grade 3 already in your bind zone, because she can sense it there when she's being placed. So with of course the grade 3 unit, you can prepare your grade 1. If you already have the grade 2 in your bind zone, start from grade 0s and she will fix your grade 3, which is just amazing, because Whenever you have set up your bind zone, you're set to go for the entire game, because you can start out with your grade 1, your grade 0 or your grade 2, and you can just flow through time essentially, and that is what I like about the aesthetics of the deck, is you just start somewhere in time and you end like at grade 3, which will always almost happen. And yeah, this is just a very good attack extender. You can just call it any grade 2 of course. So we play 4 copies of it of course, because yeah, this deck revolves all around Steam Maidens of course. Then for this deck we actually need a little bit of a discard engine, how I want to say it, because you want to bind cards from your drop zone actually, and for that you need cards to be sent to the drop zone. And if you don't really want to guard with the combo pieces like your grade 2 of course, because what will happen is they're just 5k shields. They're not really benefiting for you to guard with. So what I just did, I added some discard engine into the deck to make sure they're in the drop zone for you to bind, and yeah, that's really it to it. So I'm playing 4 copies of Steam Scar Air Cup I think. I know many people dislike this card, and that's just from other decks. I was always a really big fan of this card. I just think a discard for a drive check adds a little bit of pressure against your opponent, because if they hit a defensive trigger or they just hit a heal guard and they put themselves on 20k, you attack them for 10, they're always scared about that one single trigger in those drive checks. Who wants to pass a Vanguard? It's the same. So they're most scared about just having that extra 5k just to let them not pass, because if you hit a crit then they just think, oh wait, I'm now on 3 damage already. But for the discard engine you just dump the cards you want in your drop zone of course, and you get value back in the form of a drive check. And because your Vanguard will usually hit for quite big numbers, because she gains 3k for every card in your bind zone, she usually hits between like 25, 28 on a consistent basis. So having that extra drive check has some meaning behind it. And if your opponent like PGs your Vanguard of course, then you of course have your rear guards that are somewhat smaller because of the multi-attacks they do, and they can really use the trigger power to their advantage. So I think this helps really in the deck. It fits my playstyle. I think many people it doesn't really do it, but I just love this card. And for the rest, yeah, you can discard this grade 3. It doesn't have any meaning in this deck, because you don't really care about the discard. You just want to have that extra value. And in the later grade ones, this helps you to make some of your pluses, because even though this deck can multi-attack a lot, like get a free unit onto the board with your grade 3, this deck doesn't really plus all that much, but doesn't require you to plus that much, because you can start with any unit from your hand and you can just multi-attack from it. So even if you start with a grade 0, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, or not grade 3 actually, you can still multi-attack, so you don't really have to be worried about which piece you want to have. Then for a very old grade 2 actually, and I was very happy to pick this card up actually, because I was like, oh damn, I get to win it again, because this is like 3 years ago that I won this card last, and I was always thinking it has some really vibrant colors behind it, and I was like, let's run them again. So what he does, bind the card from your hand and draw a card. So very simple skill. It helps you to make that bind zone can really rush your opponent quite a bit, because if you're of course on air cup, you have to drive check, you start and kill on yourself, get a trigger 23. If your opponent is on an 8k base, it's just 20k.
Yeah, it's just a magical number.
Just a magical number, really amazing. And if you have like 3 Vanguards, or let's say for example this as your Vanguard, then air cup is your Vanguard, it's just quite some pressure, and essentially if you have a critical trigger on top of it. And for the rest, it's just a great fight target. What I usually do is write Lost Break and have Air Cup actually as my rearguard if I have a second Lost Break as my rearguard of course, because this is just 10, this will force them out their quick shield, and it makes this a little bit awkward to guard, because they usually want to guard for 28, but they don't really want to use a heal guard on the last attack. It feels wasted, so they usually do like 15 plus 5, but if they lost their quick shield, it's just like they're almost forced to use the heal guard if they have it, of course, because of that awkward number. And for the rest of the grade 2s, we come to another philosophy, because yes, what I just said about Lost Break and Air Cup is one part of the grade 2 rush, but I just like to play the Naboo. Naboo is really a good card. I thought it when she came out with, of course, Lost Legend, of course, but she actually became better across time, because now we have grade 3 heal cards, and she prevents your opponent from guarding with grade 1s or higher. With that, you allow them not to guard on the first attack of that turn with the heal card, so they get less value out of that heal card. Because this will attack for 10. They usually want to use the quick shield, but they also want to use the heal guard, because then you have for the entire turn the tanker on the front row. And if they do it on, for example, the Air Cup, yeah, okay, he is perfectly guarded even if I get like 2 critical triggers. But then you have Lost Break, and then he hits there for 23 on their 18. Still 10k to guard. So as you can see, if they use a 5k shield on this, heal guard on this, 10k shield, it's quite some shield in the early game. And they usually want to take one attack somewhere, and it's mostly from Naboo. So even though she's just a 10k attacker, yeah, she just hits for the perfect timing and for the perfect amounts of, because it's just a low attack number. And if you want to let an attack slide to your opponent, you want to have the least amount of power, because that gives you the biggest value. For the rest, she goes to the soul. Doesn't really come up in this deck that often. This deck really doesn't really use a lot of soul, but also filters your bind zone, because she can bind a card from your drop zone. So if you send some cards with Airco, for example, to your bind zone, she can instantly bind it for you to settle in your bind zone. So another differentiation from Lost Break, but yeah, it's just whatever scenario you come across, because this also works later into the game. Also Lost Break, it's just what happens in your hand. If your hand is like you need to guard a lot, then this card is better. If your hand is like I have some luxury behind it, then of course Lost Break is better. But also something with Lost Break is you bind your pieces somewhat, because you want to have them in the bind zone, but that allows you to filter your pieces out of your hand, which makes it so you cannot really pressure your opponent or punish your opponent, because you don't have them on the field to attack with, start a chain or something like that. So you need to rely on other pieces, and that is where the weakness of Lost Break lies, and where Naboo, her strength comes in. So that is why I play 3 copies of her, and that's really it. And then I go to my grade 1s, and here we have another Steam Maiden. This is one I didn't expect for her first skill, because this, like when we first saw that there were Steam Maidens and they really revolve around using Steam Maidens, I was like, how do they want to incorporate triggers into the mix? Because you have the Uru heal trigger, of course, and she's a Steam Maiden, but we now have Heal Guardians. So how do we use that? And that is where this card comes in, because on a Vanguard circle, she can just Soul Blast 1, and then you can bind a grade 2 or less card from your hand, and then if that's unit or engine draw card, if that unit is a trigger, you can draw additional cards. So if you put like Ulu in your bind zone or any other trigger, you can just draw 2 cards. So that is where a little bit of your draw engine comes in the beginning of the game, because you need your pieces to rush and make some pressure to your opponent. And if you have a little bit of that extra draw in the early game, a little bit of that filter, you can make that rush come more into reality. And for her second skill, it's just at the end of the battle she attack, counter blast 1, and go a grade higher from your bind zone, of course. So the same skill all over again, only a grade 1, so this goes into grade 2. The grade 2, of course, goes into a grade 3, and your grade 3 is usually or the boss unit itself or Piano Boy. So you just go across time and try to pressure your opponent that way. But what is a downside to this card? It sort of forces us to play the old heals, and well, that can be a, like, I think in my personal opinion, heal cards are really amazing in this format, because it just stops you from dying early. Essentially, if you go second, sometimes your opponent doesn't really think about you having 20k shield, because now everything is 15k shield. So if, for example, you go first and your opponent is hitting for 28, that's really a magical number. But now you have 20k, so it helps you to guard that. It also like is worse for the parts where you're getting pressure yourself. Yeah. So it's not that bad, but it's still not optimal.
When it comes to the heal guardians, there are of course different ways to talk about it. Where is the heal guardian better than the 20k shield? That's the discussion what we have multiple times. When you go first, then you basically have the turn that they go into the grade 1, attack into you, and normally the opponent will do one attack. So they attack with their grade 1 into your grade 1 in the most decks.
Yeah.
And you will not use your heal guardian.
No.
So then comes your grade 2 turn. So they attack with their grade 2 into your grade 2. And if they rush you, then that would be the time that you use your heal guardian. But in the most situations, you let it through, or you just use a 15k shield and that would be enough.
Yeah, definitely. And
so, before you continue, so so if you go first, then you have actually 1 moment to use your G Guardian, because after that you will go heal Guardian. I mean, after that you go to grade 3 and you couldn't use them anymore. If you go second, then it's a different story, because the turn that they go into their grade 3 and you're chilling on grade 2, that's actually the turn that you want to use your heal Guardians. That's actually the most effective turn. But everything after that, the 20k shield becomes better.
Yeah, of course. And what you have mostly in on your grade 1, what you said about hitting into your opponent's grade 1, you usually want to have that counterblast on grade 2. Yeah. Most decks have a... because most decks have a unit on grade 2 that want to use that counterblast.
Yeah. On right, counterblast, blah blah blah.
Yeah, do something whatever your plan is. Yeah. And after that, you want to have that counterblast for your grade 3. So you want to take an extra damage or something like that. And that is where you just don't really use that heal guardian that much.
Yeah, it's basically most of the time going second when they go to grade 3. That's the most effective turn. Yeah. And then in that moment you need to have a heal guardian, you need to go second, they need to have a very explosive grade 3 turn. There are lots of issues what makes a heal guardian better than the normal heal. But again, it's situational. Yeah. When it comes to this deck, of course, the name, that extra attack, the aesthetics, lots of things say you use the older heal. But I could understand people going 2-on-2 or playing just heal guardians, or at least taking one in for hopefully maybe getting that one card.
Yeah, definitely. I think for this deck I just want to play the grade 0 heals. Just because of the fact there are actually a sort of a beta in this deck. Yeah. And that is what I just find fun about this deck, and it allows you to have extra options, because we don't have any other Steam Maiden as a great as a triggers. Yeah. But just for our skill, that was really about it. We ramped on the heal guards after that, but her skill is still the same. Just the fact that she binds triggers for extra draws. It can be handy. It can set up your bind zone, but you really want to have more on your grade 1 and 2 in your bind zone. Then you want to have trigger units in your bind zone at the beginning, because the triggers will come and you can just call a trigger from your hand and that's already fine. But the grade 1 and 2 you need in the bind zone. So she can be misleading in that part. So don't force yourself to use that, like, so for example, get that extra draw, but it's still nice value if you can have the option to.
It's basically if you have a hand with lots of triggers and you think, well, this is too much defense, but I need combo pieces, that's when you just bind the trigger from your hand.
Definitely. And it doesn't really matter what trigger you bind, you can just bind a critical trigger. Or
that works till you draw 2.
Yeah, definitely.
+1.
Then for a Steam Maiden, that is, I was like, okay, this is a Steam Maiden. Yes, it is, but I didn't think about this card at the beginning, but because it's a discard card. So why would you run this card in this deck? And that's because I run a discard engine in this deck. I run Air Cup, of course, so I have the means of discarding, and this is just a very nice combo for like your like a plan B. Like a plan B on your grade 2 turn, because you usually want to bind cards from your drop zone, so you want to send them there. But let's say, for example, this is a better play, or you already have your cards in your bind zone, then then you can just do this, where you discard with Air Cup your Ribble. Then Ribble will be called to the field, will be a 13k attacker, booster, whatever you want. You have that extra drive check, and she essentially is for a Soul Blast, like a +2. 1 card on field and 1 card on hand, because she will draw an extra card out of it. So this is like, after you have set up your bind zone, this is your draw engine, and that is where the most of the draws come in. And for the rest, yes, a drive check is like a lot of pressure for your opponent to do it, essentially if your Vanguard is like a big number in this deck, of course. So
it also does help if you don't want to commit. So if, let's say, you have only Air Cap as Vanguard, you could just call this, basically. You discard her, you call her, you have her on the field chilling there, you attack with your Vanguard, you have a double drive check, and then if you get something, you give it to her and she attacks. It's basically just, if you don't want to commit too much to the field, or you don't have the hand to commit, she does still help to put the pressure. Because remember, guys, when we talk about Steam Maidens and we talk about the old Melon, we talk about Time Leap. Now, the reason why also they've built this deck to have a stronger early game is because you don't want your opponent to have 1 damage when you go into that turn. Because hitting a trigger is very good against a multi-attacking.
Definitely. Because 1 trigger can save you like 30 to 40k shield if you're doing it across like 7 attacks.
Exactly. So if, let's say, they are chilling on 1 damage or even on 2 damage, and they could take 3 and they take 2 triggers, that's when they put their Vanguard into the 33 or let's say 32, and that's when basically your grade 3s will be hitting, but your grade 2s maybe will hit.
It's awkward.
And
even if they hit like 5k to guard.
Exactly. Again, Piano Boy could be effective because still cost them 2 cards from the hand, but again, they could still be 2 5ks or 5k in a grade 3.
Or even the quick shoot if they go second. You have lots of option for that. And but of course, when we play, of course, I tend to have like more of an aggressive playstyle on that. I just want to, call my cards to the field and try to rush my opponent a little bit, because I find it more entertaining to play in that scenario. And of course, you give your opponent less options to do whatever they want. And of course, it's still a Steam Maiden, so you can just call it to the field, even though it doesn't have the skill to time leap herself. The Vanguard has the skill to time leap. So you can just get this to a grade 2, and if you have it set up in your bind zone, you can just go into this and start your chain. So whatever you
still want to, and they get to the grade.
Precisely, and you can you also get the counter charge for it. So it's not that bad. It's just for consistency's sake. You can also try to run Steam Maiden Melon with Upclutch Dragon and the Upstream Dragon as your engine in this deck, and just instead of the Air Cup. You can do that. I don't think it's that good in this deck. It's an option if you want to run that, as maybe you have some preference for it. But I just think this is a better option for now, because it can get you quite some cards on hand, has some good iteration in other departments, because Air Cup in this deck is really versatile, and there's having this card as your sort of Melon clone, where you just use it for the name consistency, and for Air Cup it's just, that's why I run it with 4, and you of course want to have some great ones to ride, and this riding is not that bad. Okay, and then for the last grade one, I run 4 copies of Steam Breath Dragon, so he's just there to find your grade 3, because we're playing only 6 grade 3s in this deck, and that's like
4 right targets.
4 right targets, but Piano will always come and like, hello!
Piano Boy doesn't give a marker. You basically just discard him if you have him in your hand, because you would rather G-assist that right into him or right into... Also, you have the good thing about this deck, one more benefit from not running a Heal Guardian, is you could not ride into a Heal Guardian because it's a fucking grade 3. So with running less grade 3s as right targets, not running a Heal Guardian is not that bad. But this also basically just help you with the whole discarding engine, getting the right cards into the drop zone. And an extra means to just discard your Ribble. It's just extra cards. If you don't want to use a counterblast for it, you can just try your luck with the Steam Breath Dragon, of course. And if you find Piano Boy in the early game already, it's just fine to send him to the drop zone for the later game. You can just bind him afterwards and to them out with your Steam Maidens, of course. And then it's just all fine and dandy, because
then your combo is start killing your opponent with a 10+ card hand. And of course he's just again like a good beater when you are going first. Your opponent is on 8k. You can just call this on your grade 2, get a 13k in, because a 13k is just a wonderful number for you to hit, even especially if you get triggers. And just 4 copies of it, because it's also like a nice booster for your Steam Maidens to come across, because the grade 2 hit for usually 16, 19, that sort of numbers. If you pair it up with a 13k, it's perfect for Axel. It can be also good for hitting force numbers, not the perfect magic numbers, because it usually hits for 29 to 32, but still across like 1 defense trigger it can still hit them with a booster, of course. So that's why I play 4 copies of it, just for the consistency, and nothing really major about anything else. And then we go into the trigger lineup. I just play 4 critical triggers and then another 4 critical triggers, because you need the criticals in this deck, because you want to set your opponent on some damage, like to start on 3, and then you go into your grade 3 turn, if you get 1 trigger, of course. And with Ear Cup you have more chance to get to that, because of the extra drive checks. But I was thinking about winning extra draw triggers, because this deck is piece reliant and quite some bit. So I was like, do I want to win that draw triggers, like a 6-6 split, because between like 6 critical triggers and 6 draws. But when testing this deck, I was like, I don't really need it, because you can filter your hand to whatever you prefer at that time. Because lost play,
I think because you're running also the Earth Cap engine, let's say, then you don't really need the draws. But if you really fall back on V Melem and those kind of cards, then maybe you need to run the 6-on-6. Also remember that just having the crits on hand is also good. Just a 15k shield is just more effective than draws in general, actually.
And if you filter quite through to your hand, then drawing into draws isn't that, it's not that fine. No, you rather want to have that 15k shield. If it needs to be a trigger, then having that 5k, because that feels dirty. So just 8 critical triggers, I think it's just fine for this deck. And then for the rest, I'm playing 4 Tropiges. We don't really need Sentinel crits, because we want to find some pieces at least, so the draws are more beneficial in that regard. You can say like a 2-2 split or something like that. I just think a 4 draw triggers is fine, because even if you draw into it, it's still a Sentinel. And you just need it for some matchups. And this deck wants to finish up early, but you need 2 pieces to finish up early, because a 3rd grade turn, you don't go into it that often. So just 4 Tropiges.
If you do, then basically you would have a mediocre turn. You also run out of Count Blasters, run out of key pieces, and then you would have a very strange wannabe turn.
And we have already talked about this card a lot. V-Heal-Guard. V-Heal-Guard.
Basically
just heal triggers.
Not V-Heal-Guard.
No, not V-Heal-Guard. It's just your 20k heals, because she has the Steam Maiden in the card name, and it's all she or you want to play it for.
She does exist in Borderless Art.
In Borderless Art.
So that will be in the card that you will be.
I had to count that for my deck, because I of course had heal guards. And I was like, okay, I can at least use it for the Steam Maiden, because they will be coming out, of course, in Clan Selection Volume
4? 3 or 4.
Something like that.
3 or 4.
Yeah, it's confusing. And I was like, okay, I will just use it for that. And when I woke up, I was like, okay, I need to make this deck. I went to here, and I was like, shit. just forgot to tag them in.
Basically, this is the proxy deck. Because afterwards, when the cards will come in, of course the cards will not be black and white, and there will be some beautiful SPs in there. And that will be also the moment where you get those cards back in. And again, when you have those beautiful borderless cards and you put them in your binder, you just want the right deck to put them back, and this is the right deck to do that.
For the rest, I can put on more SPs, such as Team Ref, of course. But I'm like, also, this is just testing. Like, if I don't want to run it, like if I came across the idea that I don't need the Steam Maidens, I could just like easily put this out of the sleeves, and I was like,
what's that's different with the grade 3 searcher? It's very different than the heal trigger, because the heal trigger plays a big part in this deck, just being the first attacker, right? I mean, it's basically your when you started the time leap combo, you started with the stat trigger.
With overtime.
With overtime, and she is actually the overtime of the deck. Basically, she just goes there and hits numbers, and your opponent will be like, dude, what? And you'll be like, yeah, I start my combo with my heal. What you gonna do about it?
They're just like, wait, but you put just like 20k shields on the field.
Sure, yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, and put your 20k shield to guard it, bitch.
Yeah, especially if you have like one force mark, it's already hitting for 15. If they're on like 10k base.
Yeah.
Perfect number. But I really like this deck. I think it's a lot of fun. People should really experiment with this. I don't think it's better than Coningent right now, but it has some really good potential and some really surprising factors about this
different.
deck. Yeah, it's different.
It's different.
And I told you about this because I was first like, I actually don't want another Coningent support.
Nope.
I just want something new, something refreshing that I can play with, and that brings totally new aesthetics to this clan, of course.
Yeah.
And I was like, wake up, I saw these cards and I was like, thank you.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is it makes you think of Time Leap, but also it doesn't run grade 4s. It's just different. That's the thing about these kind of decks, is when they bring those decks in the clan selections, what we want to see is, we don't want to see power creep.
No.
We want to see something different. We want to see an extra deck, or an extra archetype, or archetype that is dead and they bring it back. That's what we want to see. And some people will be like, yeah, but it's not strong and we expected this and expected that. But yeah, what are you looking for? Do you want power creep? I think most people in this format do not want power creep. So
version 2.0.
Yeah, dang. So yeah, I mean, we have seen the last sets of V, and we have seen the power creep go to Luard, which was a huge gap. And then we have seen Gabriel, we have seen Gurgit, and then we were like, okay, where is this going? And it went into D, it went into Overdress, it went into, again, a new format. And what they are creating right now in the clan selections, which I like a lot, is they are giving us a different deck, a different way to look at a clan, and that's lots of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I especially think with this deck, because for me as a Gear Chronicle player, I'm usually running like really weird grade 4s in my deck, really weird grade 3 ratios, but I finally have a deck that works on itself, like not running weird numbers in my grade 1, 2, 3, because we did it for like 3 years already.
Yeah.
Please give me a deck that functions on itself, like on solo attackers on themselves, like with a consistent deck. And I think this is just, for what I wanted for this clan selection, it's just perfect. Yeah. It's all I really wanted for this deck.
And that's also the smart way of how they did the wording of the cards. As they've said, when you have the grade 3, you have the grade 2, you have the grade 1. The cards require you to have a Steam Maiden Vanguard.
Yeah.
They do not require the cards themselves to be Steam Maiden all the time. So when you run these, it would be very hard to run this as an engine in another deck.
Yeah, definitely. But they do that most for clan selection cards.
Not all of them. I mean, the way what I have seen, like for Spikes, when they did with Dudley's, they wanted to make put a deck by itself. Yeah. And we see this right now again and again and again, is that they require you to have a new boss monster, or a new boss grade 3. Although, of course, you will have other cards that they could also be run as extra mechanic, or as an extra, let's see, you have a deck and you could just run those cards in it and it would work. But I like this more.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the fact that you have just a deck, a standalone deck by itself.
Yeah, that you just have a boss unit and you work around it instead of like using the old support and using it into an old deck as a new engine.
Otherwise, you're just making the old deck better and you will not create a new deck.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I just think because right now I'm playing with cards such as Lost Break Dragon that I've never touched like for the couple of 3 years ago. Like in new decks or something like that. I'm now like, damn, let's go. Let's go back to 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, very fun for players that have that collection of cards from back in the day and they just want to use it again.
And that's also the good thing about that they are doing reprints. I don't know what they are doing for Gear Chronicle on the reprints, but mostly what I've seen from the last 2 sets is that they also try to reprint the cards that you need to make the deck.
Yeah, definitely. For the, I don't know what the upcoming reprints are, but for this reprint, for like Clan Selection Volume 2 and for the last collection, it was just like Smoke here, Steam Breath, Naboo, like the staple cards you almost need in every single deck.
Yeah, and also just getting them in high rarity is nice.
Yeah, of course, yeah. For this deck we got Naboo in a triple foiling.
It's just amazing because the card is so good, but
it's just so versatile.
Yeah, it's the same as when I had Bracky coming back as a triple rare. I was so happy. I mean, the card came in sets 1 for the clan, and now you're being like, yo, have it in a triple rare for you.
Yeah, definitely, because. And what I just find fun about those cards is like for every type of deck you have a reason to play them.
Yeah.
For Bracky, for example, if you play something like a boost spike deck back in the day, you just play it for the soul and a little bit of aggressiveness. When back in Siegfried you used it to restand it with Siegfried, of course.
Yeah.
And for Naboo right now we first played it for the bind cards, then we played it for into the soul with Chronojet. And right now with Hugars we play it for to play against Hugars.
So guard restrict. Yeah, give them just an awkward timing on using.
Yeah. So in every new format we can see a different reason to play those old cards, and that's why I think they really did a good job with, of course, the design of the cards. Yeah. Because if you can find like 3-4 different reasons in very different metas to play those cards, then it's just a wonderful card, and it's not OP or something like that.
No, it's not OP. It's just it does
it does a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So Dave, thanks for the deck profile. Hope of course to see the full deck in the future with the beautiful SPs, which will come out after set 4, I think, right?
Oh, you mean the SPs?
Yeah. This will be introduced in the clan selection.
3 or something.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
So we'll have first set 4, of course, from Overdress, and then we'll have these coming in. And when the time comes, hopefully, if there will be some changes to the deck, I think we will do another deck profile, because the deck has lots of potential. And I think that also lots of people will not know how to play exactly against the deck, which is good. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it was fun. I just still have some testing to do, but for now this will be it for the deck fight.
I think that's also what people want to see. They want to see a start, and then they will
just from a skeleton base.
Exactly, and from that moment on, they will test themselves and make it their own.
Yeah, definitely, because I just like to run it this way. That's my personal preference for some cards, but of course you can make it with all different types of cards. You can focus more on discard aesthetic, you can play more around just raw binding from drop zone. You have many cards that bind from the first or 2 sets, and just work around how you want to play it, of course, because this is my take. Maybe you guys have a different take on it, but if you have a different take, just let me know, because I'm always interested in them.
Yeah, let us know in the comment section below, or try to contact us on basically Facebook we use most of the time, and Discord you could also hit us up. We don't really use that much actually, but you could. Alright guys, thank you again for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.
Goodbye.
Till next time.